Hello there, one and all. It's Dr. Jonathan Ellerby with another live recorded 12 at 12. The 12 at 12 is every weekday. It's at 12 noon Denver Mountain Time, and it is always live, unscripted, or live, unscripted, and recorded, but posted at 12 just for you. Today's topic is feeling alone. And why do we feel so alone in the world? And what is the root of that? What is the cost of that? And what are some of the larger consequences that we see? Let's take a quick breath, slow down, get centered in the middle of whatever busyness you've got going on, and dive in. All right, taking a deep breath, letting your eyes close. I'm going to encourage you to take a really exaggerated breath in, as big as you can, and hold it. Feel all that tension. Imagine that tension of your breath is the tension of your life built up inside you, and then exhaling. Exhaling as long and fully as you possibly can. Breathing out, breathing out, breathing out until your stomach muscles contract. We're going to do that 2 more times, keeping your eyes closed, sitting comfortably but alert. Big, 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 exaggerated breath in. Hold it. Gather all that tension in your body, in your mind, in your heart, and then breathe it out. Let it go as long and fully as you can. And then one last time. Take a moment at the end of that just to appreciate the growing feeling of stillness, growing feeling of softness, the growing space within you and around you. And just for this short time we have together, let yourself be still. Let yourself be quiet. Let yourself be curious and open. Now, the topic of feeling alone is one of those things that I think we can all relate to in some respects or in some moments, but we don't often feel comfortable talking about. You see, part of feeling alone is the feeling that you can't talk about it because you feel someone else might not understand. They've got their community, they've got their friends, they would never feel like me. And yet the feeling of being alone, despite how you might phrase that or language it, is universal. And it's universal for a lot of reasons. First of all, at a young age, most of us acquire a kind of sense that the best way to know if we're doing all right is to see what other people think of us. Now, intellectually, we know that's probably not a good idea, that evaluating your worth, your health, and your performance at work or, whatever you might be doing solely based on the approval and opinions of others is pretty dangerous, right? Because that's a way that we lose our authenticity. We start to build a life from the outside in instead of from the inside out. And yet, it's normal, particularly when you're little. What else have you got to go by except looking around and seeing what your family's doing, looking around and seeing what the other kids are doing at school or on the playground? But it's important to remember as we get older that that's okay for a kid. It's not okay for us. And yet, if we've been hurt as children, and life's rough, most of us have felt some hurt as children, I'd probably say all of us, then we develop a root that we plant in that attitude, in that idea, in that impulse to look to others for approval. Now, why is this related to being alone? Well, because the feeling of being alone is usually triggered by the act of looking to others, not only for friendship or companionship, but more significantly for the kind of connection that feels affirming. We want to feel seen. We want to feel it's okay to be us. We want to feel that we aren't the only one who's going through what we're going through or feeling what we're feeling. And here's the catch-22. In some ways, you are the only one. In some ways, there is no one on this planet that will ever know what it's like to be you. But here's the good news. That means that when you look at groups of people and you feel like you're the one left out, it's true for all of them as well. What I mean is, we can be in a stadium with 10,000 people who all follow the same music group, or are rooting for the same sports team, or are voting for the same presidential candidate. But no matter how aligned they may seem, no matter how much comfort they may find in their sameness, the world really is different for every one of us. It's a difference that can feel painful because as human beings, we are built for connection. So the first thing we really need to work with is the realization that connection doesn't come from sameness. It doesn't even come from approval or being affirmed. It comes from connection. Yeah, I just said connection comes from connection. What does that mean? What it means is the act of reaching out when you feel alone. That is an effort for connection. Sharing the experience of being alone can be a way of beginning to feel connected. Recognizing that when you're with people who have common views and values, that the real beauty and power in what's going on is not in your sameness, but in your willingness to be vulnerable, to be kind, to connect, to be playful. So aloneness is not defined by not being like others, because no one's like you. There are no two people like in this world. So let's immediately dismiss that impulse, that longing. And when it arises, remind yourself, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's okay if the world doesn't look like me, sound like me, affirm me. But can I find connection in diversity? Can I go to places online or in person safely where I can simply be myself, and that is enough? Now, remember, that's a tricky loop. It's easier to say than to do. To be yourself, for many of us, requires the sense of permission and authority, that we don't need other people's approval. See how it's really tricky? But that's where we need to reconsider who and what we really are. You see, if you think of yourself as what you do, what you have, and what other people think of you, well, then aloneness is the least of your worries. There are all kinds of stresses and struggles that will arise because of that worldview. But if you see yourself as a growing, evolving soul, a spirit, an essence of energy that is uniquely you, then absolutely everything in your life experience, including aloneness, including connection, including sameness, including difference, is there for the cultivation of your own maturity, the reclaiming of your own power, and the commitment to your own authenticity. Now that is also easier to say than to do, and that's why we take things a little deeper and take the big, big perspective, the perspective of the universe, the cosmos, whatever is the greatest field of awareness that you can imagine. God, consciousness, energy. And from that vast, vast perspective, from that vast, vast viewpoint, first, we are unable to see aloneness anymore. You see all oneness. Alone becomes all one. So imagine that you take your fearful, limited view from the very narrow present moment and you lift up. And now it's no longer just you, but it's your home or apartment or house or street. And now it's your city, and now it's your country, and now it's your planet. There is no alone in this world. But to remember that means to move your identity into the place that knows that and feels that. From that place, through meditation, prayer, breath work, yoga, whatever gets you to that vast place, then you can come to the present moment and ask yourself, am I literally, logistically, technically alone? Meaning, am I cut off from people? Am I not reaching out? Or is alone right now more of a perception, more of a feeling? Doesn't make it wrong, but from the vastness of knowing that we are all one, can we then take a step and realistically challenge ourselves and ask if it's actually true? Am I really alone, or am I feeling alone? Now, if you're really alone, of course, there are ways to reach out to people and get connected in groups. We touched on that a little bit earlier, but you see, it brings us full cycle back to where we started. More often than not, alone is not an ultimate reality. We are never alone in the true sense of the word. We are always interconnected, and we are always growing and learning from whatever condition we are in. But the feeling of alone is that feeling that typically thrives when we've lost touch with the vast perspective that reminds us of our interconnection. The feeling of alone arises when we look to the world around us with the longing for validation or sameness to give ourselves permission to truly be ourselves. In the strangest way, and this is going to be a weird note to end on, the feeling of being alone is very often, at its core, the feeling of missing oneself. In the absence of the permission that we feel from others, we lose a relationship to ourselves. When we lose a relationship to our truest self, then we will lose our relationship to spirit. And that is the relationship that reminds us, that affirms, that shows us that we are never alone. And so we come back again and again and again to the evaluation, the consideration, the contemplation that when we feel alone, when we feel so lonely, we have to look, separate out fact from feeling, disconnection from the great view, from focus on the narrow, and really recognize with humility, with vulnerability, with love for ourselves, that this feeling that we are struggling with is very much about the longing for approval more than connection, permission more than connection, being liked more than connection, being involved more than connection, being wanted more than connection. And as you cut each of those little cords, and remember that those are just the old impulses of a young version of yourself wanting to fit in a difficult moment of life, you can return your relationship to the only relationship that there is, your relationship with our source, the essence of who you are. And from that place, know yourself again and turn your loneliness into the beauty of solitude and the power of knowing that we are never truly alone. So we're going to probably explore this another day, but thank you for being with me. Another 12 at 12, another 15 minutes instead. If you want to know more or be in touch, go to my website, jonathanellerby.com. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.